seating on Southwest Airlines flights. They just made a change recently to have assigned seats, and people were like, no. But it's happening. And so we have Brandon Blewett, who is a travel writer and chief development officer, who is joining me as we kind of get caught up on how this is going. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me today.
All right. So let me take things all the way back to your impressions of Southwest's policies in terms of seating before the shift.
I think that what Southwest advantage was it was an image of flexibility, right? If you were someone that flew frequently, you could check your bag for free and then you could get on the plane and sit wherever you wanted. So there was an element of the restrictions that other airlines maybe posed on passengers that didn't exist, and that was their brand.
Yeah, it was. It was what people knew them for, whether you liked it or didn't like it. I mean, it was a part, at least for the people who chose Southwest, what they chose them for. And so seeing this shift, which seems a little bit more like all of the other airlines, even before it was instituted, did you think it was going to end well for them, or that this could be problematic for their business model?
It sort of went against their motto, which was "You're now free to move about the cabin," right? So I knew that there was going to have to be a lot of really strong change management. Customers are going to have backlash because there was a reason that they chose Southwest for their policies on both seating and bags. But you're also going to have to train all of your employees because these are new systems, new policies that you're having to adopt and adopt consistently so that everyone is facing the same situation, whether they're at Love or whether they're at Midway or they're at LaGuardia. And to me, the deadline that they set, kudos to them for meeting that deadline, but it was quite aggressive to have such a stark policy shift.
Yeah, and it was one of a few that kind of all took place around the same time, it felt like.
It was, and I think the timing of that is also something that probably should have been evaluated. The overhead bins on Southwest are not as large as some of the other carriers. And if you're going to charge people for bags first, then you would see, okay, well, people are going to start crowding their bags, and this is going to be a problem for us. But the rollout it seemed that it wasn't completely baked or well thought out on how it was going to impact the boarding process, which I think is what really frustrates most customers.
And you, when I gave your title, a little bit, maybe if we can talk a little bit about your company, because it is the largest private equity backed paving platform, and an Amazon best-selling author you are as well. So tell me a little bit about the investor side of this, because you do private equity. Tell me about the investor side of this.
There's a couple things. I think first and foremost, what Southwest board looked at was the other U.S. airlines generated $7 billion in revenue for baggage fees. Southwest was missing out on that. I think a lot of investors and boards are going to look at that and say, hey, how do we get on that action? One thing that we always try to do, so as you mentioned, we are the largest private equity-backed paving roll-up. And what we always try to do is make sure that any change that is going to occur, it's communicated first to the business that we are acquiring. So that way their people know the new systems, the new processes. And we also simultaneously work with them to train the customer. And we do it in stages. So that way that if there are changes, kind of boil the frog so that it doesn't seem so dramatic and so stark all at once. And that's when you have all the disruptions and the complaints on social media.
And so for your company, Paver, that kind of encompasses what you all do and how you all look at things. But as an author of How to Avoid Strangers on Airplanes, when you think of assigned seating, it actually, maybe it helps.
I think the biggest issue with Southwest's assigned seating policy has been, and this is from online chatter, that the seat that someone has chosen or selected has been reassigned. And there's also been issues where seat maps were not consistent when two people were looking at the same flight. And I would be very frustrated if you're a parent and you have your child sitting next to you, and then you find out that they've separated you and there's not a way to get you back together. That would be very frustrating on any airline. So I think the system glitch there for Southwest, and hopefully that's something that's that's an easy fix is probably what created more consternation than the actual, assignments of seats themselves.
Aha, yes, I can definitely see that. So then it seems like the rollout's been a little bumpy.
It has, and listen, having worked in deals where there's changes to processes, anytime there's some type of, whether it's an investor choice or there's a merger and acquisition, there will be people that hated a certain process and they gritted their teeth and just did it, and then as soon as you ask them to change, the way that they used to do things was it was the best way ever, right? So I do think that there is just a resistance to change that's inherent in all people. But the rollout itself, I think, could have been much smoother, and maybe it required more time before it was rolled out to customers.
Mm-hmm. Do you think from the company side of things that maybe the changes that they're making are changes that they need to compete and to stay around?
I do think that Southwest wanted to make sure that they weren't viewed as just a low cost carrier, akin to a Spirit or Frontier, and then they meet their market needs, by having a lot of extra fees. I do think there was sort of a space where Southwest was where maybe their identity of just being fun wasn't enough to be sustainable, and they definitely looked at the revenue that other airlines were generating from bag fees, and listen, it doesn't necessarily impact the loyalty to those airlines. So, why not give it a try? We're coming up on, March. We'll have quarterly earnings calls to see, how it goes for the airline. But I do see a lot more online complaints and chatter on, X or, Instagram related to Southwest that, honestly, I'd seen with the other airlines, but they were generally kind of free from that kind of online chatter.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was telling my producers, I mean, the last time I flew Southwest, I felt like not having assigned seats felt like the wild, wild west.
Right. I'm the same way, and I fly every week for work, and I'm used to having my assigned seat, and I like that because a lot of times, meetings run late. If I'm having to get to O'Hare, you know how that traffic is, to get off the highway, and so knowing that even if I get there just as the boarding door is closing, that I'm going to be in the emergency exit aisle row. That is a nice that's a nice thing to get on the plane to, rather than trying to sit in a middle seat at the back next to the lavatory.
Yeah. Do they have enough appeal that the more they become like these other airlines, though, they will still survive?
That's a great question. I think it'll be really interesting to see how the earnings calls go. I do think that what I have noticed is there has been not necessarily rollbacks, but they have been very sensitive, and they have changed and amended some of the policies, that they have rolled out. So we'll see. I do think that they had a very, very unique brand. It was fun. It was flexibility. This does erode that. So time will tell.
What do they say? The only thing constant is change. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Brandon Blewett with Pave America. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend.